In the gleaming heart of the Galactic Confederation Hall, a floating amphitheater the size of a small moon and shaped like a spiraling nautilus, the trial of Council versus humanity officially began. Every known species had sent delegates. Some floated, some slithered, a few vibrated audibly when anxious. Everyone was expecting a formal statement from Earth's delegation, maybe a plea for leniency, a quote from some old philosopher, something dignified. Instead, the human lawyer, one Leonard Lenny Trask, formerly of stand-up clubs and now somehow an accredited galactic legal representative, leaned into his mic and began with, "Knock, knock." There was a moment of collective confusion. A few beings turned purple with what was later determined to be second-hand embarrassment. The presiding judge, a three-headed crustacean from the planet Veldoc 9, blinked each of its eyes in sequence. "Who is there?" the judge asked, with the cautious dread of a being who had just stepped into a cultural minefield. Lenny grinned. "Europe." A pause. "Europe who?" "You're up early, Your Honor, because this case is about to get started." Muffled gasps. Several species made hissing sounds, which turned out to be their equivalent of laughter. One ooze-like ambassador from Corp 6 literally split in half from surprise. The joke was officially recorded as an acceptable opening argument, and thus the strangest legal proceeding in galactic history had begun. Lenny adjusted his tie, a garish yellow thing with tiny dancing tacos embroidered on it, and launched into his address. "Members of the Council, esteemed citizens of the galaxy, and whatever you guys from Theta Kron are, seriously, that's impressive. I stand before you not to ask for power. I stand before you to ask, why not?" There was murmuring. One delegate shouted, "Because you people domesticated wolves for fun and called it a hobby." "That's true," Lenny admitted, "and we taught them to wear birthday hats. But you're missing the point." He hit a button, and behind him appeared a chart labeled Species Who Violated the Galactic Non-Aggression Pact. Only one bar was missing: humanity. Lenny beamed. "Despite our, let's say, enthusiastic history, Earth has never violated your sacred laws. Not once. Sure, we've broken a few of our own laws. Frequently, but not yours." A 12-eyed being from the Committee of Temperance floated forward. "Humanity weaponized music. You destabilized an entire moon colony with something called dubstep. We destabilized ourselves too," Lenny shot back. "Fair's fair." The audience laughed again. Even the judge chuckled, which sounded like someone shucking a coconut inside a bag of gravel. Lenny leaned in, voice softening. "You don't trust us. I get that. We're unpredictable. We love weird food. We make movies about space empires collapsing for fun. But we also built rockets to chase dreams we couldn't pronounce. We look at chaos and say, let's dance. You think we're dangerous? But maybe we're just new." There was a long pause, then the jellyfish prosecutor glowed blue. "We still object to the knock-knock joke." "Overruled," the judge said. "It was oddly effective." And just like that, humanity's plea for galactic equality had begun. With a joke and a warning, Earth wasn't asking for power. Earth was already inside the building. South imagined trying to defend all of humanity against a sentient jellyfish. Now imagine the jellyfish has 12 degrees in interstellar law, shares a brain with 3,000 other jellyfish in a hive mind legal consortium, and despises jazz. That's Prosecutor Vrentok of the Glasson Collective, a translucent floating disk of pulsing nerves and glowing veins, suspended in a nutrient bubble and emitting a faint smell of antiseptic dread. Vrentok began with no greeting, no pleasantries. Just a slow, echoing voice like a haunted wind chime underwater. "Humanity is statistically reckless, chronologically immature, culturally erratic. You celebrate rituals involving carved vegetables and ignite explosives for amusement. You have games that involve balls and property damage. Your strategic doctrine involves something called winging it." To which Lenny, Earth's legally questionable lawyer, raised a finger and said, "Objection. That last one is our backup doctrine." Vrentok's membrane rippled with disdain. The Council must deny Earth a full vote, lest we condone chaos as policy. General Adisa, Earth's grizzled retired war hero in attendance, solely to intimidate people with eyebrow raises, cleared his throat. Excuse me, your gelatinousness, that is not my title. Fine. Bubble Honcho. You claim we're erratic, but let's talk about your side. The Glasson Collective once voted to ban sarcasm galaxy-wide because it was logically unparsable. And didn't that pass? Vrentok paused. It did. It was later repealed after your Earth sitcoms caused mass neural feedback in 3-star systems. I rest my case, Adisa grunted. Meanwhile, Earth's caffeine-addicted diplomat, Maria Estevez, was half listening and half building a tower of espresso cups on the table. Look, she muttered, I've been to 46 diplomatic summits. I once negotiated a treaty in a zero-gravity room full of farting plant people, and even they didn't act this tight. Vrentok's membrane darkened. Your jazz diplomacy sessions were cited as violations of Article 7b, prohibited sonic chaos. Lenny perked up. Oh, you mean the Miles Davis incident? Yeah, that ambassador was vaporized, but in our defense, he ascended to a higher plane. His people called it a spiritual promotion. He disintegrated screaming. Lenny shrugged. Same thing, really. The chamber buzzed with murmurs. One squid-like delegate whispered to another, What is jazz? The other replied, It's like music, but with arguments inside. Vrentok hovered higher. You manipulate meaning, twist precedent, drown clarity in metaphor. Maria raised a cup. That's just Tuesdays for us. Vrentok pulsed again. You corrupted our traditions. You made the supreme arbiter cry with a yo mama joke. Adisa looked proud. To be fair, it was extremely clever. And now you demand equality? Lenny smiled, adjusting his ridiculous tie. We don't demand it, he said. We earn it. By showing up. By playing by your rules and accidentally winning anyway. Because while your laws are precise, ours are flexible, improvisational, like jazz. Vrentok began to vibrate with fury. We do not like jazz. Lenny bowed. Exactly. That's why it works. And for the first time in Confederation history, a jellyfish considered throwing itself into a bureaucratic black hole just to get away from Earth's legal rhythm section. Prosecutor Vrentok drifted ominously to the center of the chamber, its translucent bell flickering like a bioluminescent threat display. Without preamble, the chamber lights dimmed and a hologram flickered to life, an Earth courtroom staple, Exhibit A. Let the record show, Vrentok said, that this is a factual account, verified, time-stamped, witnessed by no fewer than 6 ambassadors, 2 planetary defense satellites, and 1 very traumatized duck. The recording began innocently enough. A quiet lake, a duck waddling across a pier in New Zealand, then rising from beneath the surface like a leviathan of regret, a Terran nuclear submarine. The duck, oblivious, flapped once and landed directly on the vessel's periscope. At the exact same moment, the crown prince of the gas giants, Zirlock the Tremendous, was visiting Earth for a diplomatic cruise on that very sub. Inside the command room, alarms blared. Unauthorized surface breach, screamed a technician. Launch protocol active, shouted another. Is that a duck? Lenny, Earth's defense attorney and chaos wrangler, held up a finger. Just to be clear, Your Honor, the duck didn't initiate the launch. The launch was already halfway scheduled due to a clerical mix-up with a seafood order labeled sub-attack. Zirlock, the gelatinous prince with 7 eyes and a tiara made of molten gas, had chosen that exact moment to lean on what he thought was a chair, but was actually the weapons console. The missile never launched, but the sub did. Straight up, surfaced at full speed, shot 12 feet into the air, flipped, and landed on a diplomatic barge hosting the Interstellar Maritime Accord Summit. Lenny cleared his throat. Everyone survived, except the duck. But even then, rumors say it was seen waddling off, glowing slightly. Maria, the espresso-fueled diplomat, leaned in. For what it's worth, we gave the Crown Prince a lifetime supply of bath bombs and a Netflix account. He said it helped. Vrentok pulsed indignantly. The duck sat atop the most sensitive navigational instrument in your fleet, and the result was the temporary withdrawal of 7 nations from the water-based Conflict Resolution Pact. Adisa, the retired general, grunted. In fairness, that treaty was already hanging by a thread. A duck just expedited things. One of the avian delegates from the Zitharan clutch chirped, "Was the duck ever honored? For service?" "Posthumously," Lenny said solemn. "We called it Operation Featherstorm. Gave it a tiny medal and everything." A 3-headed reptilian judge hissed, "Your entire defense is based on the idea that absurdity somehow negates culpability." Lenny beamed. "No, our defense is that you wrote the treaties. We just followed them." With enthusiasm. Maria sipped her 6th espresso. "Besides, if one waterfowl can derail your entire legal framework, maybe the problem isn't the duck. Maybe the problem is your system." The chamber went silent. Even Vrentok, for a single pulsing moment, looked uncertain. Because deep down, everyone knew. Earth might be absurd, but absurdity apparently wins court cases. So, this is where things start to spiral. Fast. Because now it's Earth's turn to ask the questions. Lenny, the ex-stand-up comedian turned interstellar attorney, sauntered up to the witness pool. Yes, pool, because the first witness was a Talon diplomat, a massive translucent tube worm submerged in thick brine and surrounded by emotionally supportive seaweed. Lenny gave the Talon a friendly nod. "I just have one question for you, Ambassador Nerglox. Do you understand sarcasm?" The worm recoiled like it had been tasered by grammar. "Sarcasm is a form of deception," it gurgled. "A vocal betrayal. We outlawed it 3 millennia ago." "Fascinating," Lenny said, adjusting his crooked tie. "Then how do you explain your species voting in favor of Galactic Trade Agreement 94B, which bans trade with any species that uses sarcasm unless it's funny enough to be forgiven?" Gasps. Audible ones. The chamber lights flickered as 3 delegates simultaneously updated their legal databases. Nerglox quivered. We assumed no one would meet the threshold." Lenny smiled. "You underestimated us." Meanwhile, the chamber therapist, a sentient gas in a crystal jar named Trundle, floated nervously nearby. It released a calming vapor. 2 delegates fainted anyway. Then came Maria's turn. Our espresso-powered diplomat walked up to a 4-armed insectoid bureaucrat from the Tharnak Empire. "Quick question," she began, sipping her 7th espresso. "Is it true your government once refused a refugee fleet entry because their paperwork was stapled instead of plasma welded?" The insectoid clicked its mandibles. "Protocol 8002 mandates?" "So that's a yes," Maria interrupted, scribbling something on her tablet. Follow-up, "Do you eat paper?" That is irrelevant." "No, it's relevant," Maria grinned. "Because humans don't eat paperwork. We just lose it. And you still think we're the unreliable ones?" The therapist released another cloud of chill gas. Trundle's voice hummed gently. "Please imagine a soft nebula, drifting through space, without sarcasm." General Adisa went last. He stood before a cube-shaped life form named Juris 9, a legal AI wrapped in 43 simultaneous thought threads. Adisa's voice was low. "Do you consider Earth unpredictable?" "Statistically, yes. You respond emotionally to logical situations. You provoke chaos. You take risks." Adisa raised an eyebrow. "And yet every major galactic conflict in the last 50 years, we weren't in any of them." The cube paused. Its lights flickered. "Correct." Adisa leaned closer. "Maybe it's because we understand something your equations don't. Chaos isn't failure. It's adaptation, improvisation, the jazz of survival." Trundle in the background started shaking. I need a break." The therapist jar floated off the floor and was quietly escorted from the chamber by 2 empathetic plant beasts. Lenny turned to the chamber. "We may panic," he said. "We may yell. Our diplomats drink ungodly amounts of caffeine, and our general hasn't smiled since 2123. But we show up. We face the chaos. And we never, ever run from cross-examination." One tentacled delegate whispered, "I think I'm starting to like them." And that's how Earth won round 3, by triggering 2 breakdowns, 5 logic loops, and a legal AI's existential crisis. Maria hadn't slept in 37 hours. The chamber's ambient lighting had already shifted through 3 circadian cycles. The only thing keeping her upright was the makeshift IV drip of espresso she jury-rigged using a water straw and sheer diplomatic willpower. She stood at the center of the great deliberation floor, surrounded by 300 alien delegates, 4 nervous jellyfish, and at least 1 hostile cloud, and cleared her throat. "Good morning," she said. "It's night," croaked a delegate shaped like a screaming birdcage. "I don't recognize time anymore," she replied flatly. "But thank you, Squeeb." Maria adjusted her jacket, which was mostly coffee stains at this point, and raised a small object. "This," she declared, "is a mug, containing the essence of Earth's most sacred stimulant, coffee. It is not just a beverage. It is a constitutional principle." Confused murmurs spread through the chamber. "On Earth," Maria continued, "we founded nations on ideals like liberty, justice, and the right to shout at your toaster at 6 a.m. while holding one of these." She held the mug higher. "This is what fuels democracies. Caffeine. It is the elixir of patience, the lubricant of compromise, and the only reason I haven't drop-kicked an ambassador today." From the far bench, Jurist 9, the sentient legal cube, blinked. "Your argument is, the stimulant enabled your governmental evolution?" Maria pointed dramatically. "Yes. Caffeine gives us the stamina to listen to each other, even when we disagree, even when we hate each other's haircuts. We don't conquer. We conference, loudly, over burnt drip brew, for 10 hours straight." A gelatinous orb named Melanth bobbed uncertainly. "And this espresso-based cooperation is your defense for voting rights?" Maria nodded, fire in her eyes. "Exactly, because despite our chaotic nature, despite our memes and loud music and 3-day news cycles, we still keep showing up to the conversation. We argue, we shout, we have elections where a professional lizard impersonator once won a district, and yet we don't collapse. That is resilience. That is commitment to process." General Adiza folded his arms from the gallery. "She's in the zone," he muttered. "No one stops Maria in caffeine fugue state." Lenny leaned over. "She's quoting Earth's founding legal document next, isn't she?" And she did. "Our Constitution," Maria said, now pacing with the intensity of someone giving a TED Talk inside a supernova, "begins with 3 words. We, the people. It doesn't say we the perfect, or we the genetically optimized, or we the glowing hive mind with 12 eyeballs and a central insurance algorithm. No offense, Berthuk." Berthuk's made a gurgle of polite acknowledgement. "It says people. Flawed, weird, late, over-caffeinated, loud people." Silence. Then Trundle, the chamber therapist, whispered from the back, "She's not wrong." Maria exhaled, finally letting the mug rest. "So no, we're not the tidiest species. We don't meditate before meetings. We don't hatch from serene crystal pods. But we believe in voice, in voting, in vigorous, jittery debate. And that's why we belong here." Applause broke out. Even the screaming birdcage clanged softly. And for one weird, glorious moment, Earth's right to vote came down to a woman, a mug, and 100 milligrams of moral clarity per ounce. General Adisa was 78, half bionic, and still looked like he could punch a meteor out of orbit. When he took the stand, he didn't sit. He leaned, on a cane that was actually a decommissioned missile core. The tribunal watched in cautious silence as he pulled out a whiteboard, an ancient Earth relic he insisted on using, and a marker that squeaked like a wounded dolphin. "All right, aliens," he grunted. "Let's talk about freedom." A confused squelch echoed from a crustacean delegate in row 4. Adisa uncapped the marker and, with absolute confidence, drew what can only be described as a stick figure riding a tank while waving a flag. Over it, in shaky handwriting, "Freedom, probably." "Now," he began, gesturing to the artwork, "this isn't technically accurate. The tanks don't usually smile, but you get the point." Prosecutor Glift, the translucent jellyfish with a law degree, wobbled nervously. Is this a legal argument? Adisa squinted at Glift. You ever try arguing with a hive mind bureaucracy while being shot at by 16-legged fundamentalists and also allergic to the planet's oxygen? No? Then hush. Malanth the Orb spoke hesitantly. Your credentials? You are a military authority? I was the guy they called when diplomacy failed, or sometimes when it got too polite and someone needed yelling at. Retired now, mostly, unless Earth starts exploding again. He drew a jagged blob labeled conflict, then another blob labeled people trying not to die. See, aliens, he said. You think voting is about elegant institutions and perfect civics. But on Earth, we had to fight for it. Every inch of democratic space, bought with the sweat of people who couldn't agree on pizza toppings, but knew tyranny when they saw it. Glyph tried again. And this justifies Earth's claim to galactic enfranchisement? Adisa nodded solemnly. Because even after all that, we still believe in ballots more than bullets. We could take power by force, but we don't. We show up, argue, cry, sometimes elect terrible karaoke singers, and then we count votes. You want proof of maturity? That's it. There was a beat of silence. Then Trundle, the chamber therapist, raised a tentacle. Did you say karaoke singers? Adisa blinked. Long story. Remind me to tell you about the 2087 Iowa primaries. He turned back to the whiteboard, added a crude sun labeled Hope, and capped the marker like he'd just dropped a nuclear truth bomb. Then he yawned, and without fanfare sat down, folded his arms, and took a nap right there at the witness stand. The tribunal didn't know what to do. Was this part of the testimony? Was this a human intimidation ritual? Had he just won the argument and left? Lenny whispered to Maria, I think the general's power move is unconsciousness. She nodded. That's not a nap. That's a mic drop in Earth dialect. And for a courtroom built on logic, protocol, and galactic jurisprudence, Earth had just introduced a new tactic, strategic snoring. So in a moment of what they called cross-cultural calibration, the Galactic Council decided the best way to understand humanity was improv comedy, specifically Earth-style stand-up, in a courtroom, during a constitutional trial. Look, they meant well. Counselor Zarnak, a five-eyed luminescent sphere with the emotional range of a houseplant, was first to take the stage. He hovered forward and said, in a deadpan voice that vibrated at 412 hertz, Greetings. I recently attempted to consume solid food. It resisted. Ha ha. Silence. Then he blinked. All five eyes at once. No one laughed. The air felt like someone had deflated a galaxy, but the council was committed. Next up was Krthek, a mantis being from the Shadow Belt, who tried observational humor. I don't understand why humans fear spiders. They're just less complicated crabs. Is this irony? Please validate my mirth. A baby Gorlax in the front row started crying. Two Vrak diplomats fled the chamber, claiming they had developed secondhand shame in 4 new languages. Back at the human bench, Lenny leaned over to Maria, whispering, Should we tell them that comedy is not mandatory? No, she hissed. Let it unfold. This is justice now. The final alien to try was Thumta of the Mind Fog Collective, a neural gas in a jar, who projected holograms and attempted a human-style roast. They pointed their light beam at Morrison and boomed, You humans are like quantum particles, never fully here, rarely in agreement, and somehow still responsible for catastrophic chain reactions. Actually, that got a few chuckles. From the humans, anyway. Lenny stood and clapped. Hey, that one slapped, Thumta pulsed with pride. Slapping is good? Yes, Morrison nodded gravely. That was medium roast, Earth legal. Inspired, Thumta turned to the jellyfish prosecutor, Glift. And you, my wobbly friend, resemble an undercooked dumpling with litigation envy. Glift wobbled in protest. This is unacceptable. I am dignified goo. The council began bickering over what constituted a punchline. Someone asked if sarcasm was a war crime. A Biran delegate attempted a knock-knock joke and accidentally opened a minor wormhole. Meanwhile, Earth's lawyer, Maria, finally stood, motioned for quiet, and said, See? This is our point. She gestured to the chaos. Comedy is about chaos, risk, failure. It's unscripted connection, and Earth has been winging it since the Bronze Age. You want to understand humans? Understand this. We tell jokes during our disasters. Sometimes about them, it's how we survive. Zarnak blinked again. This method produces resilience? Yes, Maria said. And memes, but mostly resilience. The chamber was silent. Then Trundle, the therapist, raised his tentacles slowly and said, I would like to try a yo mama joke. And that's when the Chief Justice called a 10-minute recess for emotional stabilization. Because alien improv was officially classified as a high-risk diplomatic maneuver. And Earth? Earth laughed. The thing about humans, something the Galactic Council hadn't fully appreciated, is that we treat legal documents the way raccoons treat trash bins, as puzzles that absolutely must be broken into. So when Maria, our lead Earth attorney and former stand-up comic, stood before the council clutching the Galactic Concord of United Species, she looked less like a lawyer and more like someone about to commit a beautiful crime. Article 7, subsection C, she began, pacing in front of 37 species who mostly communicated through bioluminescence, spit patterns, or ambient humming. It states that any species contributing more than 9% of interstellar crisis intervention effort must be considered for voting parity. Glift, the jellyfish prosecutor, squelched loudly. That clause refers to coordinated Confederation-led responses. Earth has acted unilaterally, and often erratically. Exactly, Maria said, smiling like a wolf in a room full of salad. But subsection D says, and I quote, exceptions may be granted in the event of unprecedented cultural propagation or anomalous resilience. Tell me, counselor, what's more anomalous than a species that still uses fax machines and defeated a flesh-eating solar AI using memes and duct tape? Zarnak blinked all 5 eyes slowly. That AI was in fact permanently destabilized by Earth's Rick-rolling. Lenny chimed in from the bench, sipping lukewarm coffee. And don't forget the psychic worms of Delta 5. We beat them with karaoke. No violence. Just 3 hours of off-key Britney Spears. Glyph's jelly tentacles rippled in visible distress. This is not law. This is chaos flavored with jazz hands. Now you're getting it, Lenny said. But let me help you along. He tapped the holographic screen and pulled up the council's species eligibility matrix, a chart that was designed to be impossible to interpret without a degree in bureaucratic recursion. Let's cross-reference Earth's contribution to disaster relief, technological innovation, and number of council members who secretly stream our cooking tutorials. Thum to the gaseous brain cloud blinked nervously. We watch your how-to pancake rituals. Maria nodded. Exactly. Cultural propagation. Now legally, that places Earth in the core consideration column, right? The chief arbiter, a crystalline being with a voice like wind chimes, muttered, technically, yes. Then, Maria concluded, under this ancient galaxy-wide constitution, Earth is already qualified for full voting rights. Your laws just didn't expect us to use them backwards. Zarnak tilted. That is unsettlingly persuasive. Suddenly, a quiet alarm went off. A panel lit up behind the bench. A literal wormhole had begun to form near the chamber, a minor side effect of improperly closed legislative subclauses. What did you do? Glyft gasped. Lenny shrugged. Found a loophole so big it tore space-time. Trundle the therapist fainted, and the council realized too late that in trying to contain humanity with rigid law, they'd given us the perfect tool, rules with rules inside them. By the end of the session, Earth wasn't just still in the game, we were rewriting it, with a grin, a marker, and a very suspicious clause labeled Appendix J Interpretive Dance. The moment the human delegation finished their closing arguments, which included a dance metaphor, a whiteboard sketch of a sentient bagel, and a full 3-minute breakdown of why coffee is a form of planetary diplomacy, the judges retreated into their deliberation chamber. What followed was 12 hours of cosmic confusion, philosophical warfare, and one incident involving a mistranslated idiom that nearly triggered a planetary embargo. Let's begin, said Arbiter Verilax, a translucent orb who spoke in harmonic vibrations. Initial impressions? I am still unsure if kiss my jurisdiction was a threat or a cultural metaphor, said Judge Nivzel, a feathered biped who had filled 3 data scrolls trying to decode Maria's closing monologue. It was sarcasm, said Thumta, the brain mist, but not aggressive sarcasm, more of a resigned, self-deprecating flavor. Judge Corthax, the sentient coral reef, grumbled. Then why did the general keep winking every time he said the word liberty? My kin interpreted that as a mating signal. Oh God, muttered Verilax, how many potential treaties are in diplomatic limbo because we can't tell when they're being funny? Meanwhile, behind the partition, the human team was lounging on fold-out chairs. Maria was flipping through the council code of conduct like it was a discount menu. Lenny was asleep with a bag of pretzel bites on his chest. The general was doodling a tank with wings labeled Diplomacy 2.0. They're still deliberating? Maria asked, glancing at her watch. It's been 6 hours. They've only just reached the part where I said, with all due respect, Lenny said groggily, which, to be fair, in human means, prepare to be emotionally obliterated. Back inside the chamber, panic had settled in. We cannot allow them to win on technical eloquence, Glyph the jellyfish prosecutor cried, slamming a pseudopod on the table. This is a matter of interstellar stability. Earth is a chaos engine powered by irony. But they used our own legal code, Veralax admitted, and technically followed every bylaw. Even the one where you can substitute a legal precedent with a snack-based parable, whispered Corthax. Yes, sighed Veralax. Appendix J. It was meant for the Flarn, back when they debated property rights using edible metaphors. We never deleted it. So what's the verdict? Nivzal asked. There was a long, painful pause. The kind of pause that makes nearby moons reconsider their orbital loyalties. Veralax finally said, the verdict is unclear. Like, extremely unclear. Should we reconvene? We'll send them an official ruling written in legally vague terms, just enough to keep them guessing. And so, Earth received the verdict. Humanity's petition is not unfounded, but its implications remain contextually non-conclusive within the flexible frameworks of interspecies governance, which Maria translated as, they blinked. Lenny smiled. So, we kind of won? The general nodded, which means next time we bring pie charts, an actual pie. And somewhere in a chamber filled with echoes of frustration and existential dread, the council realized they hadn't just judged humanity. They'd invited us back. So it finally came down to this. The vote. 194 species, 3 days of deliberation, 17 formal objections, 2 formal apologies, and 1 informal incident involving a squid ambassador and an Earth diplomat trying to explain why jazz hands weren't actually a martial threat. The vote chamber buzzed with anticipation, literally. Some species emitted electrical pulses when nervous. Others just hummed like broken microwaves. And in the center stood Earth's delegation. Maria, the stand-up lawyer, General Hank Freedom Doodle Reynolds, and Lenny, the caffeinated diplomat, now 3 espressos past rationality. Maria looked around. You feel that? The tension? Lenny asked. No, she said. The fact that we might have accidentally turned constitutional law into a party game. The chief arbiter, Veralax the Luminous, floated to the front. All representatives, cast your final vote. Should humanity receive full and equal voting rights in the Galactic Confederation? A row of crystalline buttons lit up in a half circle. Some delegates extended claws. Others projected thoughts. One particularly slow amoeba just jiggled meaningfully toward the YES panel. Earth held its breath. The results came in. Yes, 98. No, 96. Maria blinked. Wait, we won? Lenny clutched his coffee mug. We actually won. With legal interpretive dance, donut metaphors, and no death rays. The chamber exploded. Not literally, but emotionally. Some species burst into songs humans couldn't hear. A few filed lawsuits on the spot. The Silorax contingent began hurling glitter spores in protest, and 3 delegates instantly declared intent to found a breakaway council based solely on vibing. But amid the uproar, something beautiful happened. The Braha, a species that communicates through synchronized movement, stood up and began doing what appeared to be the cha-cha. Then the Zool delegates joined in, telepathically broadcasting feelings of uncontainable euphoria. Even Glift, the defeated jellyfish prosecutor, reluctantly undulated toward the rhythm. And before anyone could stop it, or understand how, an interspecies conga line had formed, snaking through the sacred legislative hall. Tentacles, pseudopods, hooves, and at least one sentient fog, all bouncing in rhythm to music that didn't technically exist. General Hank wiped a tear from his eye. God bless space democracy. Meanwhile, 3 civil suits were already being filed against Earth for emotional disruption. One accused Maria personally of reckless optimism in a public forum. But Verilax just floated in place, glowing faintly, and whispered to no one in particular, "We feared their chaos. We underestimated their joy." Back at the center of it all, Maria looked up at the stars through the council chamber dome. "No one's going to believe this back home," she said. Lenny raised his mug. "Doesn't matter, the vote is in. We're in." And as confetti rained from a species that sneezes celebratory particles and the galaxy spun ever onward, one thing was clear. Humanity hadn't just gotten a seat at the table. We'd brought the music, the coffee, and somehow the world's first legal precedent involving a conga line.